important to me, because it just, robocalls. It's not a big issue, but in terms of, quality of life, it seems to be something we can solve.
Yeah.
And I understand that there is something out there on legislation, for requiring some sort of a fix to this, so that people could block those calls. I know it's a difficult thing, because what we're dealing with is computers making the calls, but it's really ridiculous. I'm not against business at all, but this isn't business, this is harassment, is what it is. And I'm surprised if there isn't a whole bunch of people in here that do get those.
I think this issue cuts party lines, actually. I think Republicans and Democrats are frustrated by this issue. So first of all, even though this is an official event, when I am campaigning, my campaign doesn't use robocalls. You will never get a robocall from my campaign. Other organizations use robocalls. We only have volunteers, an actual person volunteering in an office making calls. So I think that's important to lead by example in terms of that. I will I'll do research as to what the legislation is, because I have heard this from a few different constituents. And we oftentimes get the robocalls of people, press 1 and you'll be connected, and people don't realize why they're being connected to our office. So we've gotten thousands of those robocalls of being connected from constituents. So I'll look at it. I know how frustrating it is, particularly for our seniors, where it's confusing, especially if you talk to the folks in their late 80s and 90s. It can be very confusing and calls at non-predictable times.
I know sometimes regulation's a bad word, but there are some places where it can be used, and I've seen it be effective.
Well, you remember one of the most popular policy provisions that was, I believe it was passed in the Bush administration, was the do not call registry list. I see a lot of faces nodding.
Doesn't work with robo.
It didn't work for the robo, but it was very popular at the time, and clearly with the robocalls we need to take another look. But thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. We almost had unanimous. I saw people's faces. It's us against the robots, so that's one thing we definitely agree on. I'm down to the last question here. 252127. Is 127 here? And do you have a question? No? All right, we're going to go one more then. One, 252078. Are you here? You have the last question, 078?
Oh,
You have
078?
078? Then you're not going to be able to ask the last question. I've been ordered to stick to the rules. 130. Are you here? Everybody's left? I didn't see that many people leaving, so we got to get to the last question here. 252126.
I'll pass.
Okay, no question.
Okay.
252142.
It's been answered.
Okay, answered.
Can I have his?
252139.
Oh, that's her. That's her.
252139.
Oh, here we go.
She's giving it to her. I'm gonna answer her, but
Yeah.
There it is. 139.
I'd like to be the one person in this room that's gonna say something favorable about Trump.
What could you possibly say?
Our country has an opportunity right now to do some great things. And our country is in real trouble, financially and in many other ways. And you, a Republican, you've got the Senate, you've got the House, and Trump, although never really a Republican or Democrat, is a populist who is in the White House, who has put a strong cabinet around him. And he's not a politician. He's not a Democrat or Republican. He's a
You should live in
businessman.
Syria.
And this country
People think this is a
really
bad
needs some
country.
good ideas to get us out of the mess we're in. What scares me most is when you have somebody like this, he's got some bold ideas, and we need them. And
should. They should.
Yeah, let her finish, let her finish.
Let her finish.
You're already said that you're against his budget proposal. We are taxed much too much as a nation. He has some great, and he doesn't wanna do things on a small scale. He's got some bold ideas, but he needs Congress to do this. And you've already voiced that you're against his budget. Other people in here have said, for instance, well, he's gonna cut the State Department, or he's gonna cut the EPA, or he's gonna cut. All of these organizations are bloated. They're inefficient, they probably have thousands of more people working in there than need to be there. And he needs, when he wants to cut like 20% or even 30%, probably they would work better. So if he cuts the EPA by 30%, that doesn't mean that, that all the environmental protection things that are going on are gonna go down the tube. Maybe that the organizations will get leaner and better run.
Well, thank you.
Just look, this nation is $20 trillion in debt. But nobody wants to cut anything.
Tax the
Everybody's
rich.
got to
Let's cut the military.
I think that this
the
man
biggest
would
budget.
really do this country some good as a businessman. And if you give a question,
No
It's a
question there.
lot of questions.
my question is to you personally.
Yeah.
You said you're against his EPA cuts, you said you're against his budget. I have a thing here from, I don't know what I did with it, from Heritage that says, that shows, I went through your voting record. You've already voted against some things that he's doing. And, you're a smart gal, and I appreciate that. But if Congress doesn't help, if Congress.
Let's not interrupt. No one interrupted anybody else. Let's keep it civil right to the very end, okay? All the way to the end.
Give me a break.
Your final question, let's grab a question, because you said you
So
just
I
put it
wanna
before with a
know,
question.
are you gonna be there to support this president and help him?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking your question. Thanks to everybody for asking their question. On issues where I agree, like tax reform, the infrastructure bill he's talking about, I'm working with this president. I look forward to working with this president. On the issues that you raised with prescription drugs, that's another opportunity to work with this president. So similar to how I worked with the previous president, although we disagreed on a lot of things, there were a couple key issues I can work with. I'm looking forward to working on growing our economy, creating jobs. He tapped into a frustration that is out there of the status quo. And when it comes to the cuts, I've always said I support savings I think we can find savings in every department, but his proposed budget is too steep when it comes to the EPA and the Department of State. I still believe there are savings to be had in every department, and just like every family or every business has to cut costs, the federal government should be able to find ways to cut costs in each program. But the specifics of his proposal, I don't support.
And what about his tax bill? He's gonna present a
And
tax cut for the American public.
I support tax cuts. I have co-sponsored legislation to repeal various taxes on businesses, whether it's the medical device tax. But I look forward to seeing the details of the package this week. We're going into session tomorrow. Again, I make sure that I look at the specifics of what the suggested policy is. And there's gonna be a lot of discussion in Congress. I ran on tax reform. I believe in tax reform. I think we need to throw out the tax code and start from scratch.
But this is bold, not just little cuts.
It's bold to throw out and start from scratch. Thank you. First, I want to thank everybody for their respect, for their great questions on both sides, on all sides of the political spectrum, and for fostering a good discussion on a lot of issues. We covered education, we covered the arts, we covered healthcare, we covered mental health, we covered Second Amendment issues, and I really appreciate you taking time. For those that weren't able to ask a question, my staff, Maddie, Donovan, and Stacy are right here, and they can follow up if you have specific issues that you'd like to discuss. But I want to thank everybody for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.